Hello everyone, my name is Adelanda and this is SolarPunking, where we discuss solarpunk ideology, things we can do in our communities to make them better, and ways to build the world that we want to live in. Before we get into today's episode, I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart to everyone who gave the podcast a chance this week and decided to stick around and join our community. I posted in the SolarPunk subreddit about the pod and got such inspiring, thoughtful feedback that it truly gave me new purpose and lit a fire under me. I got about 100 new listens in just a few days and I am over the moon. I can't say it enough. This episode is kind of the result of that. Originally, I wanted to talk about what policing would look like in a solarpunk society and whether we would even need law enforcement, but I'll save that for another day. Today, let's talk about the vision. To kick us off, I'm going to play a clip from Reimagining a SolarPunk Future, a TEDx talk with Keisha Howard. I recommend you check out the full speech and I will link it in the notes.
What is solarpunk? Solarpunk is just like cyberpunk, except for the advances in technology and science don't lead to a dystopia. It leads to a way that we can live in harmony with the earth, a way that we can have a civilization that's more egalitarian. And we have some of that technology that exists today that are nuggets to imagine a better future. We would have to make radical changes in our behavior right now. I found this quote, and I thought this quote was just profound. Someone once said that it's easier to imagine the end of the world than to imagine the end of capitalism. We're so used to the way that we're living, how we consume things, that it's easier for us to just we just need to start over. We just need to reset, have an apocalypse, and then we can, just fix everything. We just throw the whole earth out, start over on Mars or something. No changes need to be made, right? So it's easier for us to look at media that's cyberpunk in nature because that's just a couple of steps away from reality, right? So solarpunk is punk because we would have to rebel against the status quo today. We would have to rebel against all the things that we're so accustomed to as individuals, as a society, and that's pretty badass if you ask me.
I'm going to go all the way back to episode 1 to reaffirm my vision for a solarpunk society. To me, solarpunk is that radical future. A future where no one worries about where they're going to lay their head at night or how they're going to eat. And one where people are encouraged to follow their passions while honoring being in service to their community. One where third spaces are everywhere, where kids are protected and can explore the world around them freely. One that re-envisions education. One where people look out for each other. One where creativity is valued just as much as ingenuity. Where profitability is defined by how much value you add to the community instead of just how much you add to your pockets. Where the idea of pride in one's community comes from a deep, meaningful culture instead of empty, enforced patriotism. I dream of this reality a lot, and the thing that I think presses on me the most is that it's not even hard to get there, right? It's volunteering in your community to meet a need that's underserved. It's mutual aid. It's having a mindset of advancing the community. It's about conserving resources for future generations. It's about constantly improving our social, economic, and environmental conditions so that the quality of life improves for everyone. Not just some, but everyone. It's protesting unjust power structures. It's about restructuring our relationship with nature so that it's symbiotic instead of parasitic, right? It's that last part that makes solarpunk stand out from the more progressive social ideologies. I think first and foremost, Solarpunks want to heal the damage we have done to the environment and build more sustainably in all areas of society. I majored in environmental science because I wanted to understand our impacts to biodiversity and wildlife populations, and I learned that so many of us leave college sort of depressed. We learn about all the science and see firsthand the effects of overconsumption in our research. I got my start in wildlife surveying, and it was kind of a gut punch to experience the effects of habitat degradation on local wildlife communities. I remember learning about the alligator and firefly population in Armand Bayou. I started volunteering at the Nature Center as a trail guide when I was an undergrad. Armand Bayou is a 59 square mile watershed that runs from Pasadena, Texas, all the way to Clear Lake. The lake Mark Kramer talks about the habitat loss that decimated the gator population in the bayou waters in his blog post, Return of the Endangereds, that I will link below. I became passionate about habitat restoration very quickly because I could literally see the slow return of fireflies every year that we did the massive prairie planting during prairie pandemonium, and I photographed the baby gators each fall. I did extensive research on protective habitat, conservation easements, land management, land bridges, healthy ecosystems, and indigenous stewardship practices, all of which have a major role to play in a SolarPunk society. This is where the residential spaces that coexist within a natural habitat come into play, the clean water sources with fresh fish and healthy aquaculture, the community gardens, the outdoor recreation, and communal spaces enter the vision. The SolarPunk artists have perfected this element, the bright, green, happy aesthetic that popularized the ideology and piqued the interest of those of us who daydream of a world where productivity isn't the end-all be-all to our existence. Another big theme in this roadmap is degrowth and the acknowledgement that American-style consumption is extremely destructive. Some of us have, at the very least, started to back away from the capitalist holiday spending like Amazon's Prime Day that just happened this week, or the Black Friday sales that happen every year after Thanksgiving, because they are a grotesque representation of what consumerism in this country has become. Buy the latest and greatest, then toss it when there's something later and greater. Functionality and practicality be damned, right? I know I personally don't feel like those traditions mesh very well with my goals, and if you aren't quite free of them yet, stick around. This podcast is for you. I don't think SolarPunk ideology demands that you give up the idea of personal belongings and having stuff. I think it reimagines ownership, stuff we need individually and stuff we can share as a community. For example, makerspaces are some of the coolest spots I've experienced in Colorado. The one at my library has 3D printers and other awesome machinery that folks can use to build really cool stuff out of recycled plastic. Also, when I was the sustainability intern at Johnson Space Center, we planned an event called a Repair Fair, where people could come in and talk to volunteer technicians, woodworkers, and mechanics who could help them fix stuff instead of throwing it out. That was really dope, and I think the culture of reuse and repair and shared resources are a huge element of SolarPunk ideology as well. I also want to give a shout out to one of my Reddit buds with a fantastic otter-based username. I didn't get their permission to spotlight them, so you'll just have to trust me that it's a dope name, for suggesting that I cover creative reuse centers because I'd never heard of those before. From what I understand, these are like thrift stores that sell art supplies, host classes and workshops, and have studio spaces for people to come in and make stuff. That's a really cool concept. I've actually never visited one of those myself, and it sounds very familiar to the makerspace I mentioned before, but fully stocked with materials you can use. That's incredibly SolarPunk, and I like to see if I can find one nearby because I know someone I'd love to take to check it out, and I'd like to do an episode on that in the future. But that's just the groundwork, right? There is also a bit of Afrofuturism in the vision as well, and that's where the fun part comes in, where we dare to dream about what we truly want our future to look like. But we also have to consider the maybe not as exciting logistic and political parts of the strategy if we want to transform the vision into a reality. To explore that, I roughly broke the solarpunk concept down to sustainability and human rights as the main ideas. Then I went to the Human Rights Tracker at rightstracker.org and looked at the data they collected from 203 different countries. Then I went to the Environmental Performance Index and read their summary, which ranks 108 countries on climate change performance. Now, these lists are never going to be perfect. The indigenous populations of these countries may have a wildly different experience than what is portrayed, for example, but they all tend to have very strong human rights protections on paper, very strong socialist safety nets, free healthcare, public education, and other benefits for their citizens. So let's take a look at some of those benefits. There's the right to quality education, the right to sufficient healthy food, the right to health, the right to affordable housing, the right to work for a fair income, freedom from arbitrary arrest, freedom from forced disappearance, freedom from extrajudicial execution, freedom from torture, the right to assembly and association, freedom of expression, and freedom from violence against children, disabled people, LGBTQ people, and women. Now, what I found interesting is that the only country in the top 10 on both these lists is the United Kingdom. If you're from the United Kingdom, send me a comment sharing whether you believe the UK exemplifies these rights or not, and if it could be used as a foundational template to build our solarpunk society on top of. Because we absolutely can build a solarpunk community. I'm going to play a clip from Andrewism, one of my favorite content creators on YouTube. They've got plenty of videos explaining solarpunk ideology and their vision for solarpunk. The community is pretty small though. I also want to shout out Our Changing Climate because I really like that channel too. But this is from Andrewism's video, What is Solarpunk?
It all sounds pretty gooey and feel good, but I want to briefly address those that have lost hope in a better world. We're stuck thinking that this, largely, is the best that we can do. This is idea in politics these days that imagination has no place in our quote-unquote pragmatic, no-nonsense world. Which is just false. Humans are flexible creatures capable of a whole range of social arrangement. If everyone limited themselves to the confines of what is, we wouldn't be where we are today. It's time to take some steps forward, with a variety of tactics in hand. One of which is art. Art has tremendous influence on us. Music, books, paintings, TV shows, movies, etc. They shape our ideas of what humanity is and what humanity can be. While there have been many major examples of solarpunk art and entertainment yet, I think we can change that. There are interesting stories to be explored and debates to be had through art. More to the point, solarpunk is truly something you can put into reality and practice and spread. Solarpunks can help create the future they want in various ways. From basic DIY living, to maker workshops, to creating and expanding eco-living and local autonomy in our towns and cities. Solarpunk is a key piece in a mosaic of possibilities, the sense of human adaptability, and the protection of nature, which our present world is organized to destroy, but our future world must prioritize.
Definitely check out Andrewism's full video and their channel because it's full of solarpunk ideas and critiques. Also, join the conversation. Like I mentioned before, the solarpunk community is pretty small. There are a lot of different ideas and a lot of different perspectives, and I've shared some of mine today and would love to hear some of yours. I'll be doing a part 2 of this episode, which will be a deeper dive into some of the cities that are building some pretty awesome solarpunk style architecture that prioritizes sustainability. And I'd love to dive into sustainable transportation like trains, e-buses, and community bike shares, and the other interesting concepts designed to improve our relationship with the environment and wildlife. Thanks for listening to episode 6 of Solarpunking. You can catch new episodes every Sunday this summer, where I will talk about solarpunk ideology, things we can do in our communities to make them better, and ways to build a world we want to live in. If you've enjoyed listening so far, consider sharing this podcast with your friends and family members that you think would also like to join the movement. Also, consider leaving me a comment to let me know what you liked and didn't like, or if you have mutual aid resources you want me to look into. I am still working on that. Again, thank you to everyone who has subscribed and left comments. I really appreciate it. Until next week, stay hydrated and motivated.